Hello, guys. Welcome you all to my channel where we have started a series on decoding the important editorials on the newspaper in UPSC perspective, covering the prelims and the mains point of views. And it is also essential for other entrance examinations and also a piece of general knowledge for the general public to know. Let's straight away get into the video. Today, I have taken a very important piece of editorial article, which is this Onrius rules, which basically talks about the FCRA rules, that is Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Let's decode what the editorial actually talks about. It basically tells us about the newly amended FCRA rules that is amended in 2026. The rules are only amended. This is to be noted. We have amended only the rules, but not the act itself. So there is no need of passing it to the parliament and getting approval from there. Only the rules have been amended. A point of clarity. So this 2026 rules have basically restricted the NGOs from functioning, but the NGOs are an important key factor in bridging the gaps between the governments and the social goals that we have to achieve. The civil society that has been mentioned here includes all the NGOs and the self-help groups. These play a vital role in the health, education, and disaster relief, the civil liberty, and the rights. But this gaps has been left by the state, as I mentioned earlier. But using this FCRE rules, they have made it more stringent and difficult for these NGOs to perform to the fullest, is what this article basically argues. The new 2026 rules state that the NGOs must confine their work to activities specified for the registered category. So each of these NGOs must get registered, and these registration should be done under either a state or a union territory. They cannot be functional in multiple states. For that, each for functioning in each state, they have to register separately and disclose their social media handles, website, and publications. They have been barred from carrying the political content. This vague term, the political content, has what has been questioned by everyone. How can this vague political content, what do they signify? A political content, in a vague sense, it can be directly linked to a political party getting involved in this NGOs, like advocating their political ideas or religious proselytations that can be carried out, or this can simply be a movement or a protest that is against protecting the people's rights. So, protecting the civil rights can also be considered to be political in the sense. Yes, and that can be barred, is what this vague term of political content mean. And if there are stringent penalties for unapproved fund use, every fund use should be brought prior permission from the regulating system, is what is being laid down here. Initially, it was only single fee where it was paid for both the center and the state. Now, why has this been laid is what the government claims it is to promote the transparency, ensure even handedness, and protect the nation's security. First of all, what is the need of this FCRA regulation? It's obviously to protect the nation's sovereignty and the security, is what is being. It is the reason why this FCRA even exists in the first place. But the editorial article argues that this was clearly meant to stifle the work of the NGOs, adding more barriers and paperwork. It is far from transparent. And this question of transparency is what has been also questioned by the MP John Britas. In cancelling the many of the FCRA registration, more than 20,000 plus FCRA registrations have been revoked in the past decade. So, moving on, looking into the legal background, we have two important cases. First is the Indian Social Action Forum versus the Union of India case, where in 2020 the Supreme Court read down the rules that classified rights activism and protest as the political nature. So the Supreme Court argued to distinguish party politics from the movements that are taken for social and economic betterment of the people itself. In the year of 2022, this case of Noel Harper versus Union of India, the Supreme Court upheld, that is, it held on to the stringent 2020 FCRA amendments, saying it was essential for the sovereignty and national security. And that became a landmark judgment. With that being said, in 2020 and 2022, the new rules of 2026 now treats the advocacy and the political contents to be a direct ground for disqualification of the NGOs itself. That ruins the whole spirit of 2020, this case, 2020 ruling case, where the Supreme Court read down the rules and asked for distinguishing the party politics from the everyday betterment activities. The advocacy also involves the religious proselytization that's been happening. So this is a glimpse of the timeline that we have been put up. Initially, this FCRA Act came in the year of 1976, where there was this emergency rule put up to regulate the foreign investment and to check on that they do not get into any political forums, is what it is imagined. The reason of it being formulated then there. So the way forward is that the the state or the government should withdraw all of these stringent rules, this multiple fee provision that has been made in 2026, and remove the blanket of political content which is so vaguely defined, and to make it even more transparent or on what grounds these are being disqualified and everything, all the procedures should be made even more transparent for a better way that needs to be gone forward. So that's it about the editorial and checking on with the basic facts that was put up in the editorial. But when we decode deeper and understand the basic facts that are essential for our UPSC preparation, I take you to this, where we decode the basic informations which can be a potential prelims question and which can also improve our means answer writing. So let's start from the basics. What does an NGO or a civil society organization mean? NGOs are nothing but non-governmental organization, which is a voluntary group or institution, but it is not part of the government, that works for social, educational, charitable, environmental, and developmental goals. Civil society is a broader term that puts in all these NGOs, small social help groups, small help organization that make a bridge between the state and the people, bridging the gaps that fills the service delivery gaps, basically. The roles of NGOs are numerous in our Indian nation, where it has helped in putting up various health camp, disaster relief, legal aid, and education in the remote areas, human right documentation, and etc. What a foreign contribution can do, any donation or delivery or transfer of money, article, or security made by the foreign sources. This needs to be regulated because this could eventually influence domestic politics, policies, and election and the internal security. That's why the government has to regulate this foreign investments. The Act basically regulates the acceptance and utilization of the foreign contribution by individual or the association and companies in India. The objective set is nothing but to ensure the foreign funds are not used in manner which is prejud- prejudicial to the nation's interest, the sovereignty, public order, and etc. Yes, as mentioned earlier, it was laid out in 1976, the first version. Then we had our amendment, which was it's not actually the amendment, but it replaced the Act of 1976 and modernized, which is a current parent act. So FCRA 2010, what acts as a parent act for anything that is following the amendment acts. So the parent acts is 2010, and further on it was all the amendment acts that are made. In 2020, we made an amendment act. It had major rules and policies that were laid after 2010. More stringently, those rules were made. Now, what we have in 2026 is the rule amendments. Just the rules have been formulated. Initially, they had this registration and prior permission. Even the NGOs can get a prior permission for utilization of the funds that were granted. Yes, in their foreign funds that were granted, they can get a permission and then use it for. But what now it has been advocated that every use of fund in this particular category must get registered, and they should be used only in that subcategory is what we said. And this administration of foreign contribution regulation has been done by the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is very essential to know. Yes. And as I explained earlier, this political content or the political nature, it's been a gray area where there is no clear definition of it, not for the people and not the government is defining it. Now, moving on to the very important aspect, what does this tell about the fundamental rights? What does this imply in the Constitution? The rights of the people in the Constitution is where we look on to the Article 19, which the Article 19 talks about the right to freedom. In that right to freedom, we have the freedom of speech and expression that is relevant to NGOs, advocacy, awareness, and work being labeled as political content. You cannot directly label something as a political content and get it banned, right? Make it a ground for disqualification. Then in Article 19(1) Clause C, the freedom to form associations or unions is also being maintained. So we ensure two freedoms, but with reasonable restriction is what is being the conclusion in the Constitution point of view. The rights are not absolute, yes, and there is reasonable restriction in interest of the sovereignty and integrity of the nation. Note about the 2020 Act that was formulated, which was made even more stringent. It major tightened that and made Aadhaar mandatory for the office bearers. It Aadhaar to be mandatory for the office bearer and get registered. Administrative expense cap cut from 50% to 20% of the force total foreign funds. The whatever foreign funds we get or the NGOs get, out of that, only 20% should be used for the administration purposes and developing their institution. Remaining all should get directly into the charitable and the social reform works by the NGOs. Initially, it was about 50%, but it reduced to 20% to increase the more prudential use of the fund is what is being made here. Then sub-granting is being banned. The registered NGOs can no longer transfer their foreign funds to others. For example, if one NGO has got some amount, say some 20 lakh of foreign grants, it cannot transfer its remaining. For example, it has utilized the 10 or it wants to give another 10 lakhs to another NGO. It cannot do such kind of transfers of this foreign fund is what this sub-granting band means. And all FCRA should have an account in a specified SBI branch in New Delhi. This is for a more vigilant follow-up of the banking activities by the government of these NGOs. So that is about 2020 FCRA Amendment Act. Themes that has been discussed that's been involved in this editorial in Main's perspective. We have the state and the civil society trust deficit, which can be the first theme. We have the state versus civil society where there is always a tension, in linking these state and the civil society groups. We have not considered them to act freely. This civicus monitor is nothing but this is maintained by the external organizations to look into how a country enables its civil societies like the NGOs to act. Right now, our Indian civic space is termed as repressed in the Civicus Monitor. Just having a glimpse of the prelims pointers that we covered here. FCRA stands for Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Current version, as a parent, the parent of current version is nothing but the FCRA 2010. The nodal ministry is Ministry of Home Affairs, and we have the FCRA registration is valid for 5 years and it is renewable. The 2020 amendment reduced the administrative expense cap from 50% to 20%. It also made the Aadhaar mandatory for the office bearers and banned the subgranting to other NGOs. We have the Noel Harper versus Union of India 2022, where the Supreme Court upheld the 2020 FCRA amendments. An FCRA bank account must be opened in a specified branch of SBI New Delhi. Organizations of a political nature have long been barred from receiving foreign contributions under FCRA. So this is summarizing the prelims pointers for you. And I hope this video added more information to you and gave you a lot of insights. Thank you one and all. See you in the next video. Bye bye.